The moment you feel the urge to react is the moment you are being tested, not by the person in front of you, but by yourself. Toxic people do not enter your life by accident. They appear when there is something unfinished inside you, something still willing to be pulled, provoked, shaken. Stoicism begins here not with controlling others, but with reclaiming ownership of your own mind. Because the truth is simple and uncomfortable, no one can disturb you without your permission, and most people never realize when they grant it. Look closely at how toxic people operate. They rarely attack directly. They provoke, insinuate, drain, guilt, manipulate, test boundaries. Their power does not come from strength, but from reaction. They feed on attention, emotional leakage, explanation, defense. The more you try to correct them, the more they win. Marcus Aurelius warned that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. When you allow someone else to dictate those thoughts, even briefly, you hand them the brush. The Stoic does not silence toxic people by arguing. He silences them by becoming unreachable. This is not avoidance. This is mastery. Outsmarting without saying a word does not mean passive submission. It means strategic restraint. It means knowing that silence, when chosen consciously, is not weakness but authority. Most people talk to be understood. The Stoic listens to understand himself. Ask yourself how often your peace has been interrupted, not by events, but by opinions, someone's tone, someone's disrespect, someone's subtle dig. These moments feel small, yet they accumulate. They clutter the mind. They steal clarity. They turn your inner space into a crowded marketplace where every voice demands attention. The first discipline is not discipline of action, but discipline of perception. Epictetus reminded us that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Toxic people thrive on distorted judgments. They want you to believe. You must respond, explain, correct, or defend. You do not. Clear the mind, and you will see how predictable they are. Every toxic pattern repeats. Provocation seeks reaction. Silence breaks the cycle. Calm confuses manipulation. Indifference starves drama. This is why self-control terrifies those who depend on chaos. When you no longer flinch, they lose their grip. When you no longer rush to speak, they reveal themselves. But this level of control cannot be improvised in the moment. It is built long before the encounter. It is forged in daily discipline, in how you speak to yourself, in how you handle discomfort when no one is watching. The mind that reacts impulsively to others is the same mind that lacks structure in solitude. Stoicism is not situational. It is a way of being. Observe how quickly the untrained mind seeks validation. A toxic remark lands, and immediately the impulse arises to restore balance through words, to prove worth, to reclaim dignity through argument. Yet dignity does not live in explanation. It lives in composure. The Stoic understands that character is revealed not when things go well, but when they don't. Anyone can be calm in comfort. Few can remain centered under disrespect. This is where self-awareness becomes a weapon. You begin to notice the sensation before the reaction, the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face, the mental rehearsal of responses. Instead of obeying these signals, you study them. You create distance. Between stimulus and response lies freedom. This space is small, but it is everything. In that space, you choose who you are. Toxic people are experts at collapsing that space. They want immediacy. They want you off balance. They want to pull you into their emotional tempo. Refuse to match it. Refuse to mirror disorder. When you slow down, when you do less than expected, when you say nothing at all, you reclaim the tempo. You force them to confront their own noise. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. This is not moral posturing. It is psychological truth. To mirror toxicity is to multiply it. To absorb it without reaction is to neutralize it. The Stoic does not need to announce boundaries. He embodies them. His calm is not performative. It is rooted in understanding what truly matters. And what truly matters is not winning exchanges, but preserving inner clarity. The mind cluttered by resentment, anger, or the need to dominate is a compromised mind. It cannot see clearly. It cannot act wisely. Toxic people sense this weakness instinctively. They exploit confusion. But clarity is armor. When your priorities are aligned, when your values are internal, external chaos loses relevance. This does not mean you tolerate abuse. Stoicism is not endurance of injustice. It is intelligent disengagement. Sometimes the most powerful response is distance. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is a simple, calm decision to no longer participate. Outsmarting without saying a word often means removing yourself from the game entirely. Not every battle deserves your presence. Yet before you can disengage externally, you must disengage internally. The voice that keeps replaying the interaction, the imagined comebacks, the lingering irritation. This is where most people lose. The person is gone, but they still occupy the mind. Stoicism teaches you to close the door deliberately, to remind yourself that your thoughts are not obligated to entertain every intrusion. You are not required to carry what does not serve your character. Discipline is deciding, again and again, what enters your mental space. Toxic people lose power the moment you stop granting them rent-free residence in your thoughts. This is not suppression. It is selection. As you move forward, understand this. The goal is not to become emotionally numb. The goal is to become emotionally sovereign, to feel without being ruled, to observe without absorbing, to act from principle, not provocation. This is the foundation. Without it, every technique fails. With it, silence becomes eloquent, presence becomes intimidating, and clarity becomes unshakable. This is where the work begins, not with them but with you. Once you understand that silence is not absence but intention, you begin to notice how rarely people truly choose it. Most speak because they are uncomfortable with the space inside themselves. Toxic people, especially, cannot tolerate silence. It reflects them back to themselves. It removes the distraction they use to avoid accountability. This is why your calm unsettles them. It denies them the mirror they want you to hold. In Stoicism, mastery always begins inward. You cannot outsmart another mind if your own is undisciplined. Before facing toxic behavior externally, you must confront the habits within yourself that respond automatically. Ask honestly, what part of you still seeks approval? What part still wants to be seen as right, respected, superior, or misunderstood? Toxic people exploit these unfinished attachments. They pull on the strings you refuse to cut. Epictetus spoke often of control, but not in the way modern ears expect. Control is not dominance over others. It is clarity over what belongs to you and what does not. Another person's behavior is not yours. Their words are not yours. Their emotional state is not yours. The moment you try to manage these things, you abandon your own territory. You step into chaos willingly. The Stoic remains at home within himself. This is difficult because the ego resists surrendering its illusions. The ego wants engagement. It wants to win. It wants to correct. It wants recognition. Silence feels like loss to the ego, even when it is victory to the soul. This is why self-discipline is not harshness but training. You train the mind the way an athlete trains the body. Repetition, awareness, restraint. Over time, the impulse weakens. Watch how quickly situations dissolve when you do not feed them. Sarcastic remark meets calm acknowledgement. A provocation meets neutral expression. A manipulative question meets a pause instead of an answer. This is not avoidance. This is discernment. You are deciding what deserves energy. Most things do not. Toxic people are impatient. They rely on momentum. They escalate when ignored, hoping to provoke reaction. This is the moment most people fail. They confuse escalation with importance. They mistake volume for truth. The Stoic recognizes this pattern and does not follow it upward. He remains grounded. The louder the storm, the deeper his roots. Mindset is not positive thinking. Stoicism rejects illusion. It is clear thinking. It is seeing people as they are, not as you wish they would be. Some are driven by insecurity, some by envy, some by control. This is not your burden. Understanding does not require engagement. Compassion does not require proximity. You can wish someone well without letting them disturb your inner order. Self-control reveals itself most clearly in moments of disrespect. Anyone can be kind when treated well. The Stoic's strength appears when insulted, ignored, or diminished, not because he feels nothing, but because he chooses not to be ruled by feeling. Emotion arises naturally. Reaction is optional. This distinction changes everything. Notice how power dynamics shift when you stop reacting. The person who expected explanation grows uncertain. The one who sought dominance feels exposed. Silence removes the script. You are no longer playing your assigned role. This often leads to projection. They accuse you of arrogance, coldness, or indifference. These accusations reveal their dependence, not your flaw. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would encounter meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful people. Not to resent them, but to be prepared. Expectation removes surprise. When you anticipate difficulty, you meet it calmly. Toxic behavior loses its shock value. It becomes weather. Unpleasant, but not personal. Preparation is a form of respect for yourself. You rehearse calm. You rehearse restraint. You decide in advance how you will behave, regardless of how others act. This is discipline, not rigid but deliberate. You become consistent. Predictable to yourself, unpredictable to others. They cannot manipulate what they cannot read. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop explaining yourself. You realize how little explanation was ever required. Most people were not listening to understand anyway. They were listening to respond, to counter, to twist. Silence bypasses this entirely. It keeps your dignity intact. It keeps your intentions clean. But do not confuse silence with suppression. Stoicism does not ask you to swallow injustice. It asks you to respond wisely. Sometimes wisdom speaks. Sometimes it walks away. Sometimes it sets a boundary without emotion. The difference is intent. You are no longer reacting. You are choosing. Self-awareness deepens when you notice how often you were reacting out of habit, not necessity. You replay old patterns and see how predictable they were. The argument, the justification, the lingering frustration. Now you see the alternative: calm, distance, focus, growth. This awareness is uncomfortable at first. It reveals how much energy was wasted, but it also reveals freedom. Personal growth is not becoming more impressive. It is becoming less disturbed. It is reducing the number of things that can shake you. Toxic people shrink as your inner world expands. They sense when you are no longer available for games. They either adjust or disappear. Both outcomes serve you. Self-development in the Stoic sense is subtraction, not accumulation. You remove false needs, the need to be liked, the need to be right, the need to be understood by everyone. As these needs fall away, clarity sharpens. You see your path more clearly. You move with less resistance. The greatest irony is that silence often communicates more than words ever could. It signals confidence. It signals boundaries. It signals that your self-worth is internal. Those who understand respect it. Those who don't reveal themselves. As this discipline deepens, you begin to experience a different kind of power. Not loud, not aggressive, quiet, stable, unshakable. The power of someone who knows that peace is not found in controlling others, but in governing oneself. This is not retreat from life. It is engagement on your own terms. And once you taste this clarity, you no longer fear toxic people. You see them clearly. You understand them without being entangled. You remain present without being pulled. This is the second step, the realization that your mind is not a battlefield unless you invite the war. There comes a moment when you realize that the greatest leverage toxic people ever had over you was emotional access. Not their words, not their status, not their proximity, but the permission you unknowingly granted them to influence your inner state. Once this becomes clear, a quiet shift begins. You stop asking how to handle them and start asking why they ever had space inside you to begin with. Stoicism turns the spotlight inward without mercy, but also without cruelty. It does not flatter the ego. It does not comfort illusions. It asks you to see yourself clearly. Why did that comment bother you? Why did that dismissal linger? Why did silence from someone else feel like rejection? These questions are not accusations. They are invitations to self-knowledge, and self-knowledge is the foundation of freedom. Toxic dynamics persist because they resonate with something unresolved. A need for validation, a fear of being overlooked, a habit of equating attention with worth. When someone presses on these vulnerabilities, the reaction feels automatic, justified, inevitable. But the Stoic learns to slow this process down. He examines the impulse before it becomes action. He studies his own patterns as carefully as he studies others. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should ask of every impression, is this necessary? Most are not. Most reactions add nothing of value. They do not improve character. They do not clarify truth. They simply discharge emotion. The Stoic is not interested in discharge. He is interested in direction. Where does this reaction lead? Toward growth or toward repetition? Self-control is not about becoming rigid. It is about becoming precise. You begin to choose responses that align with your long-term character, not your short-term relief. This is difficult because short-term relief is seductive, saying the cutting remark, sending the message, making the point. These things feel powerful in the moment, but they leave residue, regret, distraction, inner noise. Discipline teaches you to delay gratification, even emotional gratification. You learn to sit with discomfort without needing to express it outwardly. This is not suppression. It is digestion. You allow emotion to move through you without letting it steer you. Over time, the emotions lose their urgency. They no longer demand action. They simply inform. Toxic people rely on urgency. They want immediate response because immediacy bypasses wisdom. The Stoic responds on his own timeline. Sometimes that timeline is never. This refusal to rush is not indifference to truth, but respect for clarity. You do not owe your emotional energy to anyone who has not earned your trust. As self-awareness deepens, you begin to notice how often people project their internal state outward. Their anger reveals their insecurity. Their criticism reveals their dissatisfaction. Their manipulation reveals their fear of losing control. When you stop personalizing these behaviors, their power evaporates. You see them as symptoms, not attacks. This perspective does not make you superior. It makes you grounded. You no longer need to dominate or submit. You simply observe. Observation creates space. Space creates choice. Choice creates freedom. This chain is the essence of Stoic practice. Personal growth accelerates when you stop framing every interaction as a test of your worth. You realize that worth is not negotiated in conversation. It is established through consistent alignment between values and actions. A person who knows who they are does not need to announce it. It shows in how they move, how they listen, how they withdraw when necessary. Withdrawal is often misunderstood. People equate it with defeat. But the Stoic knows that strategic withdrawal is wisdom. You do not stand in the path of every storm to prove your strength. You choose when to engage and when to conserve energy. This discernment protects the mind. One of the hardest lessons is accepting that not everyone will understand your silence. Some will interpret it as weakness, others as arrogance. This is the price of independence. When your sense of self is internal, external interpretation loses relevance. You cannot control how you are perceived. You can control how you behave. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he had the power to retreat into his own mind at any time. This inner refuge is not escape. It is reset. When interactions become draining, when voices grow loud, when confusion rises, you return inward. You remind yourself of what is within your control. You release the rest. Self-development in Stoicism is a process of continual refinement. You catch yourself earlier. You recover faster. You linger less in resentment. You become less interesting to those who seek reaction. Toxic people sense this shift. Some will push harder, desperate to regain access. Others will fade away. Both outcomes confirm your progress. The mind, once cleared, becomes a place of strength. Decisions become cleaner. Boundaries become simpler. You no longer need elaborate strategies to outsmart anyone. Your clarity does the work for you. You are no longer playing chess with every interaction. You are living by principle. This does not make life sterile. On the contrary, it makes it richer. You engage more fully with what matters. You invest energy where it grows. You withdraw from what drains. This selective engagement is not selfish. It is responsible. As you continue this practice, you begin to understand a deeper truth. The ultimate victory over toxic people is not changing them, but becoming someone they cannot influence. This is not achieved through confrontation, but through transformation. And transformation begins with seeing yourself clearly, without excuses, without condemnation. This is the third step. The shift from managing others to mastering yourself, from reacting to choosing, from noise to clarity. And once this shift occurs, everything else follows naturally. At this stage, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. You stop measuring your progress by how others behave and start measuring it by how little they disturb you. This is one of the quiet milestones of Stoic growth. The external world remains as unpredictable as ever, but your inner world becomes increasingly ordered. Not controlled through force, but aligned through understanding. You begin to see that toxic people are not obstacles placed in your path, but tests of your discipline. Not tests you asked for, but tests you can use. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to observe your own stability. Do you tense? Do you rush to respond? Do you feel the pull of old habits? Each moment reveals where the work remains. Marcus Aurelius advised himself to meet provocation with reason, not resentment. Reason does not mean cold logic alone. It means proportion. It means responding in a way that matches the true significance of the situation, not the emotional volume of the other person. Most toxic behavior is small in substance and loud in presentation. The Stoics sees through this imbalance. One of the most powerful tools you develop is selective engagement. You learn that not every statement requires a response, and not every challenge deserves acknowledgement. Silence becomes a filter. What passes through it is worthy. What does not fades. This filtering protects your time, your focus, and your emotional reserves. With this comes a new relationship to respect. You no longer chase it. You no longer demand it. You understand that respect follows consistency. People watch how you handle pressure more than how you speak in calm moments. When they see that you are not easily provoked, that you do not perform for approval, they adjust, some with admiration, some with discomfort. Discomfort in others is often a sign that you have changed the dynamic. Toxic people rely on predictability. They know which buttons to press. When those buttons stop working, confusion sets in. They may escalate, attempt guilt, or frame you as the problem. This is not regression. It is exposure. Their tactics become visible when they fail. Stoicism teaches you to remain steady during this phase. Do not explain your silence. Do not justify your boundaries. Explanation invites debate. Debate invites manipulation. Your calm consistency is explanation enough. Over time, even the most persistent provocations lose momentum when they receive nothing in return. This steadiness requires energy, especially at first. Old habits resist change. The urge to clarify, to defend, to be seen as reasonable can resurface. This is where discipline shows its depth. Discipline is not one decision, but many small refusals. Refusal to engage in gossip. Refusal to replay conversations. Refusal to internalize disrespect. Self-discipline strengthens when paired with routine. Stoics understood the value of daily reflection. You review your day. Where did you react unnecessarily? Where did you maintain composure? This is not self-criticism. It is calibration. You are aligning behavior with values, slowly, predictably, reliably. As your internal order improves, you notice something unexpected. Your presence changes. You speak less, but when you do, people listen. You move without hurry. You respond without heat. This quiet authority is not learned from books alone. It emerges from lived restraint. Personal growth often feels invisible from the inside. There is no applause for self-control, no recognition for silence, but the benefits accumulate. Mental clarity sharpens, decision-making improves, emotional fatigue decreases. You have more energy for creation, learning, and meaningful connection. Toxic people, by contrast, thrive on depletion. They consume energy. When you stop providing it, they face their own emptiness. Some will attempt to provoke pity. Others will attempt to provoke anger. The Stoic sees both as distractions. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Understanding does not require participation. Self-awareness deepens as you recognize the difference between influence and responsibility. You can influence how you behave. You are not responsible for how others feel about it. This distinction liberates you from the need to manage reactions. You act rightly because it is right, not because it will be applauded. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the tranquility of the soul depends on the opinions we choose. You begin to choose opinions that support steadiness. That silence is strength. That distance can be healthy. That peace is a priority, not a reward. These beliefs shape behavior without effort. As this mindset settles, you stop seeing toxic people as enemies. They become reminders of where you once were, reminders of patterns you have outgrown, reminders of why discipline matters. Gratitude replaces resentment. Not because they treated you well, but because they revealed something important. This does not mean you invite them back into your life. Growth includes discernment. You choose environments that support clarity. You limit exposure to chaos. This is not fear. It is stewardship of the mind. Outsmarting without saying a word reaches a new level here. It is no longer tactical. It is structural. Your life itself becomes the boundary. Your habits, your values, your pace all signal that you are not available for dysfunction. No confrontation required. This is the fourth step. The transition from effortful restraint to embodied discipline, from conscious silence to natural composure, from managing interactions to living in a way that makes toxic dynamics irrelevant. As discipline becomes embodied rather than forced, you begin to notice a deeper shift. Your identity is no longer shaped by opposition. You are not defining yourself by who irritates you, who challenges you, or who disrespects you. This is a critical turning point. Many people remain trapped because even their resistance keeps them tied to what they claim to outgrow. The Stoic cuts this final thread quietly. You realize that toxic people once occupied space in your mind because your inner world was still negotiating itself. Uncertainty creates openings, clarity closes them. When your values are firm, manipulation has nothing to attach to. You no longer need to rehearse responses or anticipate conflicts. You trust your character to handle what arises. This trust is built through consistency. You do what you say you will do. You act according to principle even when it is inconvenient. Over time, this alignment removes inner friction. Decisions become simpler. You no longer argue with yourself. And when the inner argument ends, the outer arguments lose their appeal. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of ruling desires before attempting to rule circumstances. Many toxic interactions are fueled by unexamined desire, the desire to be validated, to be acknowledged, to be seen as competent or morally right. When these desires weaken, provocation loses its target. Silence becomes effortless because there is nothing pressing to express. Self-control at this level feels less like restraint and more like clarity. You are not holding yourself back. You simply see no reason to move. This is often misunderstood by others. They expect engagement because they are accustomed to emotional availability. When it is no longer there, they feel disoriented. Some interpret this as coldness. In reality, it is focus. Focus is one of the Stoics' greatest assets. You direct attention deliberately. You invest it where it compounds: learning, health, craft, meaningful relationships. Toxic people demand attention without return. Once you recognize this imbalance, disengagement feels natural, not forced. Marcus Aurelius spoke often about protecting the ruling faculty of the mind. This faculty governs judgment, intention, and choice. When it is compromised by resentment or distraction, everything suffers. By withdrawing from unnecessary conflict, you preserve this inner command center. Life becomes more navigable. Personal growth accelerates when emotional energy is no longer leaking through constant reaction. You sleep better. You think more clearly. You respond to real challenges with greater effectiveness. This is the unseen reward of Stoic discipline. Others may not notice immediately, but you do. As your inner world stabilizes, your relationships begin to reorganize. Some connections deepen. They are based on mutual respect and calm exchange. Others weaken or dissolve. They were sustained by drama, conflict, or emotional dependency. This pruning is not loss, it is refinement. Self-awareness sharpens as you observe how different people respond to your steadiness. Those who are secure respect it. Those who are insecure challenge it. This feedback teaches you where to invest trust. You become selective without becoming cynical. There is also a moral dimension to this practice. Stoicism is not about indifference to others' suffering. It is about refusing to be pulled into patterns that degrade character. You can care without entanglement. You can empathize without absorbing. This balance protects both parties. Outsmarting toxic people without saying a word does not mean humiliating them through silence. It means refusing to participate in dynamics that harm you. The victory is internal. You remain intact. You remain clear. You remain aligned. At this point, you may notice a new challenge, pride in your restraint, the thought that you are above others, more disciplined, more aware. Stoicism warns against this subtle trap. Pride is another form of disturbance. It reintroduces comparison. The Stoic returns to humility, remembering that discipline is a practice, not a status. Humility keeps the mind flexible. You remain open to learning. You remain aware of your own fallibility. This prevents rigidity. Toxicity can arise internally as well, through harsh self-judgment or unrealistic standards. The same clarity you apply outward must be applied inward. Self-development continues through honest reflection. You ask not only how others affect you, but how you affect others. Calm is not an excuse for distance without care. Boundaries must be paired with integrity. You do not manipulate through silence. You use it as a tool of respect. As this understanding deepens, silence becomes less noticeable. It is no longer a strategy. It is simply how you move through the world. You speak when there is value. You withdraw when there is not. No explanation required. This is the fifth step. The release of identity built on reaction. The establishment of focus, humility, and inner trust. You are no longer defined by what you resist, but by what you choose to cultivate. With identity no longer anchored to reaction, a quieter strength takes its place. You begin to operate from intention rather than impulse, and this changes how every situation unfolds. The world does not become kinder, but it becomes clearer. You see patterns sooner. You recognize manipulation before it takes shape. You sense when engagement will drain rather than develop. This foresight is not suspicion, it is discernment earned through discipline. Stoicism trains you to meet reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Some people will never communicate honestly. Some will always seek leverage. Accepting this removes frustration. You stop expecting integrity from those who have not cultivated it. This is not bitterness. It is accuracy. Accurate expectations protect the mind. As clarity grows, your silence becomes more precise. You no longer withdraw from everything. You choose. There are moments when speech is necessary, when truth must be stated plainly. But even then, the tone is measured. No excess. No emotional overflow. Words are used like tools, not weapons. When spoken calmly, truth lands with more weight than anger ever could. Self-discipline at this level manifests as emotional economy. You spend energy where it produces return. You no longer argue with people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer explain boundaries to those who benefit from crossing them. You act, you adjust, you move on. This efficiency frees enormous mental space. Marcus Aurelius wrote that life is opinion, not in the sense that facts are irrelevant, but in the sense that interpretation shapes experience. When you interpret provocation as a threat, you tense. When you interpret it as noise, you remain steady. The event is the same. The outcome differs entirely. Personal growth becomes visible in how quickly you recover. When something does disturb you, it does not linger. You notice it, acknowledge it, and release it. You do not build stories around it. You do not carry it forward. This resilience is one of the clearest signs of inner strength. Toxic people rely on emotional residue. They expect their words to echo in your mind long after the interaction ends. When there is no echo, their influence collapses. You do not need closure from those who operate without clarity. You create your own closure through understanding. Self-awareness deepens into self-trust. You trust your capacity to handle discomfort. You trust your judgment about when to engage and when to withdraw. This trust reduces anxiety. You are no longer scanning for threats or rehearsing defenses. You are present. Presence is powerful. When you are fully present, without internal conflict, others feel it. Conversations become calmer. Tension dissipates. Even difficult exchanges lose their edge. This is not because you dominate the space, but because you stabilize it. Emotional stability is contagious. There is also a growing sense of autonomy. You recognize that peace is not something granted by others. It is cultivated internally. This realization changes your relationship with control. You stop trying to control outcomes. You focus on conduct. Outcome follows as it will. Stoicism places great emphasis on aligning with nature, which includes accepting human imperfection. People will act from fear, insecurity, and ignorance. This is part of the human condition. You stop taking it personally. You respond appropriately, not emotionally. Outsmarting without saying a word becomes less about strategy and more about being. You are no longer trying to manage impressions. You are simply living in accordance with your values. This authenticity is difficult to manipulate because it is not performative. As self-development continues, you may notice that silence now serves a different function. It creates space for others to reveal themselves. When you do not rush to fill gaps, people speak more. They expose intentions. They show priorities. Listening becomes a form of intelligence. This listening is not passive. It is active observation. You notice inconsistencies. You notice emotional undercurrents. You notice when words and actions diverge. This information allows you to adjust your boundaries without confrontation. You simply reposition yourself. Discipline also shows in how you handle loneliness. As toxic connections fall away, there may be periods of reduced social noise. This can feel uncomfortable at first. Many people tolerate dysfunction to avoid solitude. The Stoic does not. He uses solitude to strengthen the mind. Solitude reveals whether your peace is dependent on external stimulation. In quiet, you confront yourself fully. This deepens self-knowledge. It clarifies priorities. It reinforces independence. When you return to interaction, you do so from fullness, not need. This is the sixth step, the transition from reactive calm to proactive clarity. From managing disturbance to minimizing its entry, from silence as defense to silence as a natural expression of inner order. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when you realize that the battle you once prepared for no longer arrives. The sharp remarks soften. The subtle provocations lose their edge. The people who once tested your patience either change their approach or remove themselves entirely. Not because you defeated them, but because there is nothing left for them to work with. This is when you understand that the most effective transformation is invisible. At this stage, your inner world has become inhospitable to chaos. You are no longer reactive terrain. You are solid ground. Toxic behavior needs instability to survive. It needs friction, insecurity, emotional hooks. When those disappear, the behavior has nowhere to land. It passes by you the way wind passes a mountain, making noise but leaving no mark. Marcus Aurelius described the soul that is in harmony with itself as unconquerable, not loud, not aggressive. Unconquerable because it does not depend on favorable conditions to remain steady. You begin to embody this idea. Praise no longer inflates you. Criticism no longer collapses you. You are guided by an internal compass that does not spin with every external signal. What changes most noticeably is your relationship with conflict. You no longer anticipate it with tension. You no longer replay it afterward with regret. Conflict becomes information, not identity. It tells you something about the other person, about the situation, and occasionally about yourself. Then it ends. You do not carry it forward. There is a quiet confidence that grows from this restraint, not the confidence of someone who believes they are superior, but the confidence of someone who knows they can handle discomfort without losing themselves. This confidence is felt more than seen. It shows in posture, in pacing, in the absence of hurry. People respond to this in different ways. Some feel safe around you. Your calm allows them to lower their defenses. Conversations become more honest. Others feel threatened. Your lack of reactivity deprives them of leverage. They may attempt to provoke you one last time, escalating in volume or intensity. This is often the final test. The Stoic recognizes this moment and remains still, not out of stubbornness, but out of clarity. You see the pattern clearly now. You know that any reaction would only revive a dynamic that is already dissolving, so you let it end. There is also a deeper story unfolding within you. As toxic noise fades, a quieter voice becomes audible, your own. You hear your own priorities more clearly. You notice what genuinely matters to you, not what once demanded attention. This clarity brings direction. Self-development accelerates here because your energy is no longer fragmented. You invest it intentionally. You pursue growth not as an escape, but as an expression of alignment. Learning deepens, work improves, relationships become more intentional. You choose quality over quantity in every domain. Self-awareness now includes compassion for your former self. You see how easy it was to be pulled into unnecessary conflict. You understand why you reacted the way you did. This compassion prevents bitterness. You are not ashamed of who you were. You are grateful for who you are becoming. This is also where humility is reinforced. You know that discipline can weaken if neglected. You do not assume permanence. You maintain your practices. Reflection, restraint, perspective. Stoicism is not a destination. It is maintenance. Outsmarting without saying a word no longer feels like outsmarting. It feels like opting out. You have stepped beyond the need to win exchanges or proof points. You are not avoiding life. You are engaging with it selectively, consciously, responsibly. Silence now carries a different weight. It is not defensive. It is spacious. It allows room for thought, for choice, for measured action. When you do speak, it is clear, grounded, and difficult to dismiss. Words spoken from calm authority do not need volume. The story you are living shifts from reaction to authorship. You are no longer a character responding to others' scripts. You are writing your own. This authorship brings responsibility but also freedom. You cannot blame others for your inner state anymore, and you no longer need to. Toxic people fade into the background of this story. Not as villains defeated, but as chapters completed. They served their purpose by revealing what needed strengthening. Once strengthened, the lesson is complete. This is the seventh step, the integration of discipline into identity. The quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to announce strength. The calm of a mind that has learned how to remain whole in a fragmented world.